estos son los tiempos más incómodos.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure on behalf of the University of Miami to again be at eMERGE, this amazing event where ideas and people and innovation come together to make things that are new and wonderful and change our world. I'm thrilled to be able to moderate our panel today on catalyzing higher education in the Americas. And I won't go into any detail about our participants in the panel. You can look them up. But we're thrilled to be able to have Julián Rodriguez, the Rector of Universidad Austral in Argentina, Dr. Julio Frenk, the President of the University of Miami, and Dr. Diego Quiroga, also Rector of Universidad de San Francisco de Quito in Ecuador. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us, and Julián for trying to get me to sit in the middle as a true caballero. We are going to have an interactive panel where we speak to you a little bit from the point of view of our Hemispheric University Consortium, a group of 13 universities that represent a number of countries throughout the Americas, from Chile on up to Canada and across. And we've had an amazing meeting General Assembly here yesterday. We're very pleased that eMERGE offered us this space to be able to do this. And you'll be hearing some of what we spoke about just yesterday as a group. So hot off the discussion table. So first, we'd like to think about, with you gentlemen, what opportunities for higher education have been created by, let's call it the disruptions of the pandemic. We know there was tremendous loss of life and huge amounts of suffering, but conscious of that and duly noted, what good came out of it that we can use for higher education? Diego, would you like to begin?
Thank you. For us in Ecuador, the pandemic taught us many things. One is that we had to adapt very quickly. We had to train a lot of the professors to go online. We were able to internationalize the university. We really have a lot of collaboration throughout the world, especially in the United States and Europe. And through programs such as COIL, we were able to have classes where we had professors sharing classes and students sharing classes throughout the world. Research also was very interesting because although we had this breakdown in traveling, we were able also to communicate and still complete some of the research and keep doing research. So in many ways, it was a very interesting experience that forced us to develop new and innovative solutions. On the other hand, of course, there were many issues which have to do with accessibility. We have a part of the population of our students that don't have access to even to a computer, so we had to figure ways in how to provide computers and connectivity and all that to areas that are pretty remote. So that was also a challenge that we had to face. And we figured out we had many ways where we had to spend money in providing this type of technology to students who would live in very remote villages and away from the big cities.
Julio, would you like to add to that?
Sure. Well, first of all, let me express again our great appreciation to eMERGE. For the University of Miami, it's a great honor to have been since the beginning of eMERGE, one of the partners in organizing this amazing conference all around technology, and at a especially important moment for Miami when part of the consequence of the pandemic was this enormous influx of talent in entrepreneurship, in tech finance to Miami, and the potential of our city of becoming even more than it is now, really a global hub for innovation. And we believe that universities play a central role in that, and we want to play that role. Second, to your point, Felicia, there was a lot of suffering, loss of life and livelihoods. And it is our duty to make sure we build a better normal, that we don't just go back to the way things were before the pandemic. I don't think that's actually possible, but that things are better. And I think universities have an opportunity. To your question of what opportunities the pandemic created or accelerated, I think the pandemic is a watershed moment in many aspects for humankind. But if you look at sectors of the economy, the two sectors that have been most structurally disrupted are higher education and healthcare. And we at the university, since we have a comprehensive academic health system, we're operating both of those. But for higher education, to focus on the specific topic of this panel, there were a number of changes that had started more or less in the decade of the 2010s, the decade preceding the pandemic. For whatever reason, education was one of the few fields that hadn't experienced a technological revolution in the 20th century. If you brought someone from the 16th or the 17th century to the 20th century, the one place they would feel familiar would be a classroom, because nothing had really changed since then. Something happened around 2010 that it launched a number of innovations with the rise of the massive open online courses, with the application of teledelivery technologies, with new content, the explosion on simulation technologies applied to education, to higher education. I think that revolution that started just before the pandemic was fueled by advances in scientific research on how adults learn, by some of this convergence of technologies, and then very importantly for this conference, by the fact that students are facing the most dynamic labor market in history because of technological innovation in other parts. So almost by definition, you cannot learn everything you need to learn when you start at university, because new jobs are being created while students are in the university. All of that was accelerated by the pandemic. Not created, but accelerated. And I think those three areas, advances in the science of learning, advances in application of technologies that have wider applications, and embracing a concept of education for life, those are huge opportunities that the pandemic accelerated and that we need now to exploit or take advantage of as we take higher education to a new stage of development post-pandemic.
So from the 1800s to 2023, Julián, would you like to comment on that?
Thank you. First of all, I want to thanks to Julio and you, Felicia, because of this invitation. I agree with Julio to see the pandemic as accelerator to some changes in higher education related with how we see and how we use technology. Of course, we can talk about new modalities, new methodologies, new ways of working in our universities and of course in the different organizations. But mainly, I think that it is important to understand that we change individuals' attitude towards technology and our perception about innovation, about teaching and learning, and so on. I think two aspects that I want to remark related with the disruption of pandemic and technology. First, the increasing use of technologies and related devices allow us to have more data to improve our learning processes. For example, we can track better the students' performance, behavioral trends, or improve or increase personalization. With useful and correct data, we could improve the service to our students, avoiding, for example, demotivation, avoiding dropout. And second, technology promotes innovation processes that can have a high social impact in societies, especially in societies where inequalities or environmental issues are important, are in the agenda. For example, a positive experience that we have in our university that we share with the consortium is WISE, a highly innovative program for training women in entrepreneurial skills focused on STEM. And we widen the reach and the impact of that program, thanks to technology and thanks, of course, to the networking. Clearly knowledge, clearly financial access, jobs opportunities are more closer than ever on the screens of our mobiles.
So I think what we've heard from the three of you is that for higher education, this was a moment and continues to be a set of moments in which technology can create positive disruption. And it was the right time and the right place to be able to take advantage of this opportunity. So we can say that the innovation was well matched, at least in terms of time. But I'd like us to talk a little bit about some of the potential drawbacks and risks, and thinking that while technology can be a motor for changing situations of poverty and true inequality that we have in our world, where we can see a more equal playing field by gender, by race, by ethnicity, it can also go the other way.
Yeah.
Technology can create a much wider gap. We could even see less poverty and much more inequality. Can you comment a little bit on that, but with the idea of what does higher education, what do your universities need to do to mitigate those risks, to prevent those risks? And Julio, would you like to start there?
Well, like in any technology, it all depends on how it's used. I think Diego mentioned how particularly with not higher education, but basic education, but also to a large extent in higher education, you saw the inequalities being magnified by the pandemic. Lack of access to broadband, lack of access to equipment, and then getting the poorest families to migrate to remote settings, I think didn't work very well for the poorest members of our society. We need to be very intentional in making sure that as we adopt these technologies, we don't deepen those digital and other social divides, but quite the opposite, to use them to improve access to education. I think one of the lessons is that technology in education works best in hybrid, or I prefer to call them blended modalities, where you combine part of what's being present and the use of technology to enhance the classroom experience. We saw this dramatically in K through 12 education. There was a huge loss of progress for children. The lack of socialization that happens when people are together is something that technology so far cannot replace. Maybe in the future, in the metaverse, we will be able to simulate that. But right now, we need to combine in-person interactions. I like to say that we should never confuse connectivity with connection. Connectivity is what technology gives you. Connection is what happens when we're all together, like we are here at eMERGE. And it's the blended models where you use technology to enhance the learning experience. One example is simulation. I invite everyone to visit the exhibit from the University of Miami. In the education of first responders, doctors, nurses, nurse practitioners, Miami invented the manikeys. Dr. Michael Gordon, about 60 years ago, invented the manikeys that allow people in the health professions, first responders, to learn from their mistakes without hurting anyone. And you should see what we call the next gen Harvey, which is the manickey we use. It's an amazing technology, and it is an example of where you're blending in-person interaction with high tech. So we should not confuse technology in education with remote instruction. I think remote instruction has a place, but for most of the experiences, technology is an enhancer of what we do in classrooms and other spaces where learners and instructors come together. And I think that's one of the big lessons that we ought to. One of the distortions of online technology has been the commercialization of high price, low quality programs, which we're seeing most in the for-profit sector. Those are misuses of technology. We need to make sure that we use technology to enhance the educational experience in an integrative, comprehensive way, not as a separate set of tools that we applied without much thought.
Julián, would you like to continue on that?
Yeah, I want to support what Julio just said. Cardinal Newman, a person, an intellectual that thought a lot about universities, said that if we want to be at the forefront of the knowledge and of the innovation, it is necessary to deepen our roots as organization, as universities. And I believe we must have very clear before our eyes the mission of our organizations. We are responsible, at last I feel so, for guaranteeing a broader and integral view of human beings, of society, and its development, avoiding the temptation of reductionism that I think that was saying Julio just a few minutes. With this clarity, we must embrace technology without fear to improve and enhance the quality and the impact of our activity.
So we're embracing technology, but avoiding what is potentially bad and enhancing what is potentially good. Diego, would you like to continue?
Yeah, I think we learned a lot of things during the pandemic. One of the things we learned is the importance of liberal arts, the importance of students having this contact, meaningful contact with professors, the important, we have, for example, a campus in the Galapagos, in the Amazon, the importance of having that interaction with nature, that live experience. So that's something we cannot replace with online education. We cannot. At the same time, as I said before, and everyone has mentioned, it provides a lot of flexibility to what we do, allows professors to be in different places, to be working all the time in a way. So there's a lot of good things. One of the things that we also are facing now, and I think this is true in Ecuador, is true throughout the world, is this issue with artificial intelligence, for example. Now that's a new challenge that we are starting to discuss. It's not just, sometimes people see the bad things about this, or students are going to start plagiarizing, but also it provides a lot of opportunities to design new courses, new curriculum, that are more tailor-made and things like that. So it'll provide a lot of opportunities. Another concern that we have with technology is, of course, biosecurity. At the beginning of the year, the 26th of December, we were hacked. So there was a ransomware that was, and we had to deal with that. So we had to all learn how to deal with new things. Private information. There's a new law, for example, in Ecuador that deals with your personal information and how we have to handle that. So those are new challenges also that technology brings to universities, not only here in the States, but throughout Latin America. I think these are new opportunities also for those who are looking at new opportunities, how to relate to us as universities. I think I spend a lot of time talking to people in TI and information technology and trying to understand their language also, and we need to be trained also as administrators in these new technologies and these new challenges to be able to face the future that's coming.
So in the few minutes we have left, I'd like us to reflect a little bit on our own consortium. And I'll share with the group that our consortium and each of its universities, despite the tremendous challenges of the pandemic, pushed forward individually and as a group, valuing collaboration. But as the case in general, most of our interaction was virtual until yesterday. And the way that the group has celebrated being able to have the opportunity to interact in person and combine that has been quite amazing, but also the underlying and fundamental dedication as a group of universities from countries of very different levels of income and backgrounds to work together to enhance what we can offer to our students, our faculty, and to the production of knowledge. So thinking of that, thinking of technology, what role in the Americas does a consortium like our consortium, the Hemispheric University Consortium, have to play? Julián, could we start with you?
Well, clearly universities must seek alliances among us first, like the HUC, and of course with another organizations like companies, NGOs, startups. And I think that the main objective is to share experiences, good practices, investment in a new and in some cases unknown field. I think that is important. We are moving in unknown fields. So because the change is huge, and it might be wise to use a risk diversification strategy, considering the large amount that of money that this kind of investment could demand. So sharing experiences and sharing risks maybe encourage us to get into this unknown and new world.
Diego, would you like to continue?
Yeah, I want to here thank Julio and the University of Miami for putting together a group of elite universities in Latin America that we have similar concerns. We have to have access to money for research. We have to get the best and the most qualified students and prepare them for the future, future that's changing, that's unpredictable. So sharing this experience between the different members of the consortium is a great opportunity for us. And one of the things that you have in a lot of these universities in Latin America is that we have a lot of relationships, for example, with Europe. We have a lot of relationship with universities here in the States, but we don't have chances and opportunities to talk between our universities. So it's difficult for me sometimes. It's easier to travel to Miami than to Buenos Aires. So this type of opportunities to come here and share and be part of this great group I think this is going to be changing the future of higher education in Latin America. So for us, it's a great opportunity to have ideas that come from different countries. We also are all kind of concerned about some political situations that are going on in the region. There's a lot of talk about that. We don't have time. And we can also talk about the strategies, how we can consolidate as a group to face also these issues that have to do with violence and political instability and all that much of the region right now, unfortunately, is going through.
Julio.
Well, let's remember that universities have three fundamental functions. One is to educate the leading part of the workforce. The second is to provide the research that then underpins technological innovation. And the third is to provide a service, a direct service to the community. Those of us who have a health center do most of that service through the actual provision of healthcare, which is the venue for education and for research. And in the pandemic, we did the three things. The pandemic modified the three things. It offered huge opportunities to innovate. It forced us to innovate in education. It changed the way we're collaborating in research, much more open, more rapid diffusion, networks of collaboration. That's how we ended up with a vaccine in record time, because universities from all over the world collaborated with governments and with private companies to produce in record time the vaccine that saved humanity. And third, we are changing the way we deliver our service. Healthcare is being modified to its root because of the pandemic, including the use of technology, the same technologies that we use, like artificial intelligence, teledelivery, big data analysis, is transforming the way we provide service. This is an incredible opportunity for universities. But the more we do this together, the higher the likelihood we'll actually learn from each other. So I think the pandemic opens an incredible opportunity for collaboration, and I think learning from each other and what we do in those three functions is one of them, and the consortium does do that. And also we're experimenting. One of the areas for innovation is education itself. It's ed tech. We have just started a new 3-year bachelor's in innovation, technology, and design at the University of Miami, and I call that meta-innovation. It is innovation in education to fuel innovation in every other field. And it's 3 years. It's not because it delivers 25% less content, but it does cost 25% less, so it expands access. It's a different way of packaging according to pedagogical principles. So innovation in education can fuel and will fuel innovation in every other sector. And I think in this Miami moment, when we have the presence of some of the leading innovators in the world, this is an incredible opportunity for us as the university and for all the universities of the Hemispheric University Consortium.
So I want to thank everyone and also say that yesterday we had 5 presentations by 5 groups of students representing our universities, each university one by one. Amazing work, and the dedication to social change, to using technology to support the poorest was just incredible. But I also noticed that we were competing. It was each of our universities. So let's see if next year, and given that eMERGE continues, and we hope will do so to offer us a home, we can think about presenting cross-university projects where we're all coming together rather than each one at a time. I'm sure that will give us new sorts of ideas, and I'm also sure that it gives us the opportunity to do exactly what, gentlemen, you've been speaking about, which is to collaborate and to blend and to be hybrid. And we could only do that in today's world, where we can work both across borders, virtually, and also come together in places like this in Miami. So thank you to eMERGE, thank you to each of you, and thank you for the opportunity to learn from you as part of the Hemispheric University Consortium. Have a good afternoon, a good day all.
Felicia.